Hi everyone. So welcome to one more episode which is there on Zindagi ka Safar. And we have a very special guest here. Yeah. So Vijay Rego, he is not only an academician, he has been an entrepreneur, uh, and he comes with a wide variety of experience. And whenever I talk to him, there's so much I get to learn. So the first opportunity I got, I asked him, and he has taken time out from his very busy schedule to share with us about his journey in life. So Vijay, let's hear about your Zindagi ka Safar and how your life has been till this point in time.
Sure thing. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Tuhin, for inviting me. We go a long way, several decades of friendship and association. And
Yes.
it's really, it's a great privilege for me to sort of be with you on this platform today. So the other day, sort of when you had, invited me to join you on this podcast of yours, the first thing that really struck me, as you know, I'm very fond of music, and there's this band of our time, especially 70s, 80s, 90s, very popular band called the Beatles,
Hmm.
and their lead singer is a gentleman called John Lennon.
Yeah.
So the lyrics of his song Beautiful Boy actually goes like this: life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans. It's
Wow.
so amazing. Life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans. So when I started reflecting, right, about my journey thus far and thought of what I will be sharing with you, it
Hmm.
has literally been, very true. Today, when people ask me, what do you do? I find
Hmm.
it very difficult to actually explain what I do or describe what I do, because I'm actually doing many things today.
Wow.
And probably it's not what I would have planned to do, maybe, during my college days, when we were classmates at TAPME. I had a very different outlook and a very different aspiration or ambition, in
Yeah.
terms of life.
Hmm.
And today I'm doing something quite different,
Hmm.
and I'm doing multiple things.
Hmm.
But honestly, I'm, thoroughly enjoying whatever I'm doing.
Hmm.
So, today what I'm actually doing is I teach. As you know, I'm a visiting faculty at a few management and design institutes,
Hmm.
like, Wellinger, Symbiosis, NIFT, and a couple of others.
Hmm.
I also do a bit of corporate training.
Okay.
We have, a dear friend, Deepak Shetty, who was our batchmate. So
Yeah.
I've been part of Deepak's team for several years.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I'm one of his trainers, so to speak, and I work with him on a number of assignments.
Hmm.
And last but not the least, I actually, today I'm heavily into sports. So I'll
Wow.
probably share a little bit about more about, my sports journey a little later, and how I've become almost like a quasi-professional sportsman, not from an earning point of view, but
Hmm.
in terms of dedication and, participation in sports where I compete. But
Hmm.
going back, actually, so the funny thing is, for some reason, very strange reason, my earliest memories of my childhood is I wanted to be a businessman. And now there is no logical or rational reason for that,
Hmm.
because my mom's a doctor and my dad's a banker, and there's nobody remotely, associated with business in the family.
Okay.
So there's no real, strong reason for me to wanting to be a businessman. But
Hmm.
somehow I had, what we call that kida, as they say. I just had that tremendous desire to be a businessman.
Hmm.
And whatever I did during my MBA, and even subsequently when I worked for various companies,
Hmm.
was all with that goal that, it should help me somehow to start my business.
Hmm.
So after TAPME, basically, I worked for a few lifestyle companies, mostly,
Hmm.
in the textile and retail space.
Hmm.
Very good companies like Lacoste and Gap and a few other good companies.
Hmm.
And then finally, I returned to Manipal, which is also my hometown, and started a retail business in apparel.
Hmm.
Grew it quite well, over a period of time. We had a large number of stores, about 4 5 stores in Manipal, Udupi, Mangalore, and in Bangalore. So we slowly sort of expanded. And I
Hmm.
also set up a nice factory in Bangalore. I collaborated with a Bangalore based designer, and we set up our unit in Bangalore. And for quite a bit of time, it was going fantastically.
Hmm.
You remember 2007 to 9, there was this worldwide recession.
Yeah, yeah.
And interestingly, India also bore the brunt,
Hmm.
of that challenge. I mean,
Yeah.
of that situation, if I can say.
Yeah.
And suddenly, smaller businesses, which were just growing,
Hmm.
somehow these were very, very badly impacted. And
Hmm.
as you know, when you have taken some amount of, loans to build your business, banks, thanks to the so-called NPA type of, philosophy that they have, they don't give you a very, very long rope.
Yeah.
They expect that despite the challenges which are there, like what's happening now in the COVID scenario, we have to
Yeah.
quickly pay up. And, so somehow, unfortunately, I really couldn't sustain. And a
Hmm.
very, very promising business that we had set up
Hmm.
was, forced to sort of, we were forced to close it under those very, very difficult circumstances.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, something very interesting, you remember our dear Professor Simon George, who's been one of our very dear mentors.
Yeah.
He invited me when I was at Manipal to teach retail at TAPME as a visiting faculty. Before
Wow.
that, I had never really taught.
Hmm.
But as the business was, winding up, I had
Uh-huh.
this invitation from Professor Simon George
Okay.
to be a visiting faculty at TAPME
Hmm.
because the professor of retail had gone to Holland for his postdoctoral program.
Okay.
So
Okay.
you could say it was purely, some sort of a providence.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So when the business was winding up,
Hmm.
Tuhin,
Hmm.
interestingly, when the business was winding up, and
Hmm.
I had to look, for an alternative career,
Hmm. This
it just
opportunity came
struck
up.
me,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it just struck me that, and I was getting very good feedback as a teacher,
Yeah.
and it struck me that maybe this is my natural calling.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that's how I sort of slowly migrated from the world of entrepreneurship,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
was a fantastic experience,
Yeah.
into ultimately becoming an academician. And now the last 12 to 13 years, I'm, very, very happily teaching, become a well-established faculty. And so it's very, very interesting that how I ended up, into a teaching profession
Hmm.
from being a very, very aspirational, ambitious businessman,
Hmm.
which is why I said, life is what happens to you
Yeah.
when you're busy making other plans. I had all these, fantastic ambitions and, aspirations to become a big businessman, but that's fine. That's beautiful. It was a great experience and I learned a lot from it. But then today I'm very, very happy in my new role, as an academician. So that's
Okay.
where I
That's
currently am.
that's wonderful
That's
because,
exactly,
and I
where,
think you
I
have,
stand. Yeah.
I know because we have uh, had the opportunity also to be teaching at the same point in time at similar institute like Symbiosis as an example. And the students used to speak very, very highly about you and your teaching, which is there. Yeah. So
Thank you.
what they talk about is here is a person who not only brings a wealth of knowledge from the industry, he's very passionate about teaching and he really cares about the student, and want all of us to be doing very, very well. And I think the calling which was there has ensured that, and I think your passion and otherwise also has, and your skill set has ensured that this is where you are. And I think the
Yeah.
best thing about this is I understand that you have also written a book uh,
Oh,
recently.
again, a very interesting story, to him. Very, very
Ah,
interesting story. Now, the idea for the book was something which was there for several years.
mhm,
But thanks to my busy schedule, somewhere half the time into sports and the rest of the time training and teaching, I
mhm,
just really couldn't take out the time earlier to write the book.
mhm.
Now, interestingly, as you know, as visiting faculty, the last year was a very
Tough.
tumultuous year, right? It was a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
year full of turmoil.
Mhm.
And the entire academic year had, been very, very badly sort of,
Impacted. Yeah,
stretched, so
yeah.
to speak, and impacted. And, it was a very weird time.
Mhm,
Initially, when I was trying to figure out what to do during the downtime, I tried many things, but not really, working well. Out of the blue, I was reminded of this book idea, that I had several years earlier, but I
mhm.
really couldn't get down to, sort of working on it.
Hmm.
So as you know, there is this area in marketing called market segmentation. Very, very
Very,
important
very
fundamental area
important one.
of marketing.
Hmm.
Yeah, but somehow, at least in my view, as a teacher, I'd never really seen good books that had gone very deeply into, into that subject. And you will
Hmm.
remember I'd even reached out to you, for your insights and inputs, since you're also somebody who's been, very active in academics and you've also written books. And that's how, I built upon this idea. And from then on, I, worked very, very diligently to write the book. It
Hmm.
was a fantastic experience. A lot of people supported me. I reached out to a large number of practitioners,
Hmm.
both for insights from actual, how do they do segmentation in their actual brands or in their function,
Hmm.
as well as reached out to a lot of people to share their brand journeys in the form of case studies.
Hmm.
So it was really fantastic. I was able to bring in a lot of real life case studies thanks to the people, very senior people from the industry who were willing to share their insights. I'll just sort of share, I'll just quickly, I don't know if you can see this. So
Yeah, we
this
can
is
see
the
that.
book, that I can, that I actually ended up writing. And it was fantastic, and the reception has been also very good. It's, a large number of colleges in their libraries. The book is now available, and it's also being sold on Amazon, available there. So
Hmm.
that's a fantastic journey. And again, very, very satisfying, if I may say, because, something that I truly believed, was a subject that had not really been delved into very strongly.
Hmm.
And I thought, let me do my best to try and, bring it out to the best of my, my ability. So that was another fantastic, achievement, so to speak. A lot of people tell me that 2020 wasn't such a bad year for you because you actually came out with a book.
No, I think that's one thing which I have to admire, and I always build on your experience and your challenges and how you go about tackling it. You are someone who is always resilient about it. And coming to the book, though I am more of a finance person, since you wrote, I read the preview of one of your chapters, and I will say that it has been one of the best written book which I have come across, in a very
Thank you
lucid
so much.
manner
Thank
and
you.
giving a lot of insight to the subject. And it gave me a lot of clarity on that one chapter which I had. I'm sorry,
Right.
don't
Thank
take
you
me to
so
task
much.
that I didn't read the whole book and also okay. Yeah. So but I think it was a wonderful effort, and I think the
Thank you.
best books are written by people who not only have uh, done it themselves, someone like you, and also has taught it. Because I think when we teach, I think all teachers will know, that's when our concept also gets clarified. And when you have taught so many number of years, because in your 25 years of your corporate life, I think half you had spent in entrepreneurship, and the remaining half years you have now, the journey has been going on in academics. So you would
Yes,
have done,
yes.
and I think it really reflects in that particular book. So to all our viewers who might be interested in marketing, and specifically in the area of market segmentation, uh, definitely look into this book by Vijay Rego. The link I will just put it below in the uh, description section, so you can also click on that and uh, order a copy and be really benefited by it. Yeah. So Vijay, I think that's wonderful. So I don't know whether you noticed the background behind me is from the place where we met, yeah, which is Manipal. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and we went,
Absolutely.
and from 1993 to 95, at least I was there, uh, and you were my batchmate at that point in time. Uh,
Yeah.
so tell me about this particular place, and uh, how many movies have you seen in this particular place? I think it's called VC. Did you bunk and saw
Yeah.
movies and otherwise, or were you a very good boy and very good student? Uh,
No, I mean, one didn't necessarily have to bunk in order to see, because one could always go, late in the evening or
correct.
whatever.
Yes.
Interestingly, though, of course, I have seen a fair number of movies at that place. Interesting, being a localite and staying with my parents. I, obviously, those were the good old VCR days, if you remember, right? So I was also fortunate enough to, have access to VCR at home or television at home. So I guess my movie watching was sort of balanced between watching some movies at home and, maybe going out with our batchmates and friends and, occasionally seeing. So Manipal obviously has a very, very special place in my heart for two reasons. Other than the obvious fact that, we all did our MBA at the fantastically good TAPI Management Institute. And we're all very, very grateful for, our 2 years there and the type of foundation that it has given us. The other reason I'm very fond of Manipal is by coincidence, it happens to be, my hometown. So naturally, Manipal will always have, a special place. Even today, after their retirement, as you know, my parents are again living
There.
in Manipal. And for several years, I've actually run a business in Manipal. So for me, Manipal will always, have a, though today I probably consider myself more a Bangalorean, but I would say still, Manipal has its, and will always have its special place, in our heart. And, we've all had a fantastic time in Manipal, both at the college as well as, spending time in maybe going to Kapu or going to the wonderful places where you can have snacks and whatever. So I think we all, really love Manipal.
So I think that's really wonderful. And uh, since we have been talking about academics and we studied in Manipal, and now when you teach your students, uh, do you see uh, the students to be very different than how maybe we were 25 years back? Uh, because I
It's
think technology is
interesting.
something which has
Yeah,
changed things quite a lot compared to our
yeah.
times.
So
Other than that, what
yeah,
do you
so yeah. See,
say?
it's interesting that you asked this question because except for a very short stint of about 2 to 3 years where I've been a full-time faculty,
Hmm,
because of my sports aspirations,
hmm,
I've preferred, to be a visiting faculty, but that gives me enough of time also to, chase my sports pursuits, which I will share about in some time.
hmm,
So therefore, I have actually been a part of multiple colleges, as you know, typically visiting faculty at any given point in time, right? We are at 2, 3 different
yeah.
colleges. So what I have actually seen is it's a very, very wide spectrum, in terms of knowledge, in terms of interest, in terms of street smartness.
Hmm,
We get all types.
hmm,
So in that sense, I interact with some people who were as bright as our batchmates or as passionate and as ambitious as many of, we were, while
hmm,
at the same time, I see a lot of people who are very disillusioned or disinterested.
hmm,
So, it becomes a little difficult for me to, actually make that comparison
hmm,
simply because of the diversity of people that I meet.
yeah.
Having said that, if we really look at the cream,
Hmm, hmm,
they are extremely, knowledgeable, extremely smart,
yeah.
very, very ambitious. So I think by and large, I would say it continues, that same type of passion that we had, or that
Hmm,
same type of interest that we had to build a career or to do something with our life. I
hmm,
continue to see that. But
hmm,
as I said, unfortunately, I also go to certain colleges where there are youngsters who tend to be, very disinterested or very disillusioned, and that is definitely a worry. Is that something you also have observed because you also go to, different colleges? Is that
Yeah.
a
So
similar
I
type of
yeah
this thing
yeah
for
I
you?
have a similar kind of observation like you. So I think that 80-20 rule always works out. Yeah. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
if you go back and ask our professors, they might also say that 20% of your batch was very bright and all. And they will not say which
Right,
is the 20% and which is the bottom 80% according to them.
right,
But I think the similar thing which is there. The only thing which I after being into teaching for a longer period of time compared to you, which I struggle is about the attention span which today's student have, given their
right,
uh,
right,
uh, having their mobile phones and maybe on the
right,
social media and
right.
otherwise. Not that
Yeah.
we as a student did not get distracted. I think we also used to get distracted, and there'll be days when you are physically present and mentally you are not there. But here, many times you keep on figuring out that, okay, if it's a big class and all, there's some set of people who are just looking down, and so you know
Absolutely.
that
And
the guy is there on his mobile phone. So,
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
out of
And thanks
60
to
minutes,
online, that has
yeah,
become an even
now
bigger
it's become
challenge,
even
thanks
more.
to last. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so that is there. Okay, so I think it's wonderful, and as all of us go through, and it's a segment which we call as Zindagi Ka Safar. So we were talking about how life has been there, but all of us also have that English suffer, yeah, or there are challenges which is there.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I think you also might have come through some of them, but I will be more interested to know in how do you tackle with it. So in case things are not going the way it is, how
Yeah.
do you manage it, and what is some of the ways where you are able to take care of stress, reduce it? Um, let's know a little bit about how you approach life then.
Sure, sure. So if I have to talk about the recent biggest challenge that I've faced,
Hmm.
is, when I was sort of forced to exit from business,
Hmm.
not only was the decision to exit from business very traumatic,
Hmm.
but I also had a lot of burden in terms of debt, right?
Hmm.
So it's not that just because you close a business, it does not have any other repercussions. So I had a lot of debt. And honestly, at that point in time, I didn't even know what I'm going to be doing with my life. That's why,
Hmm.
as I said, I happened to be an accidental teacher, right? Just life
Hmm.
gave me that sort of opportunity and I jumped into teaching.
Hmm.
But the first several years was not only in terms of important in terms of establishing myself as a teacher and a trainer, but
Hmm.
also taking care of many, many of my earlier liabilities.
Hmm.
So therefore, stress became huge. The first few years was very stressful. I ended up, becoming, getting blood pressure, becoming obese, and a lot of these challenges were there.
Hmm.
To be honest with you, we go a long way, so I don't mind, being open about it. To be honest with you, unfortunately, it also had a very severe repercussion in terms of my marital life, of my marriage also. I'm not saying that was the only reason, but
Hmm.
perhaps that also contributed, to us ultimately, sort of, if to use a simple word, there was a very
Yeah.
severe discord in our marital life, and finally we chose to part ways.
Hmm.
So that obviously adds,
Correct.
again, it adds a lot of pressure,
Yeah.
especially when you have a child and your child is not living with you and you lose
Hmm.
out on the parenting and the family life. So
Hmm.
suddenly, I became extremely lonely in spite of being busy,
Hmm.
but still loneliness was very much and stress was very high.
Hmm.
So interestingly, since I've always been interested in sports,
Hmm.
somewhere I slowly started thinking, I'd bloated up and I'd become very, very sort of unhealthy. Even doctor told me that, you have become obese and part of your blood pressure is because of your being overweight and part of it is because of stress. You
Stress.
need to do something about it.
Hmm.
So that's how I slowly started playing badminton.
Wow. Hmm.
So that's very interesting. And
Hmm.
then with my students, I started playing football.
Hmm.
So it's very strange how this sports that I loved as a child was something that slowly became a regular part of my day-to-day life.
Hmm.
As I got deeper and deeper into sports, interestingly, somewhere I got this flashback, that during my school and college days, I was very, very talented as a sports person, but never really took it to the logical conclusion. I probably reached state level or whatever as an athlete, but
Hmm.
never really went to the national or the international level, which probably I might have had the talent to achieve it if I had that type of determination or that
Hmm.
passion for the sport.
Hmm.
So then I said, why don't I try to do something as a sports person
Hmm.
in what we call as veteran sports? So veteran
Okay.
sports means for the
Hmm.
older people also there are opportunities
Okay.
to compete.
Hmm. Hmm.
Interestingly, because I also have arthritis, the
Hmm.
doctor said, competing in very, very sports which are very hard on your knees,
Hmm.
like football or badminton, is not a good idea for you. Why don't you find something which is less stressful on your knees?
Okay.
So I said, doctor, if that's the case, what sport do you think I should take up? So he said, why don't you take up swimming?
Wow.
So I said, I've never really swum as such. We've all had little splashed around in the pool, but I've never really swum. He said, well, you can learn, right?
Mm.
So that's how a few years back, I ended up learning to swim.
Mm.
A coach observed that I was very good at backstroke. For some
Mm.
strange reason, I had the affinity, uh, you know, for backstroke. And then I took
Mm.
it up very seriously.
Mm.
And very happy to share that in 2018 and 19, I won the state championship
Congrats.
in backstroke in my event. And since then I've been training very seriously for the nationals.
Mm.
Unfortunately last year, because of the covid,
COVID.
the nationals was cancelled,
Mm-hmm.
but I hope to resume competing this year. And I'm you know trying to compete at the national level and hopefully win a medal in my age group in my favorite event.
Mm-hmm.
And that has really sort of consumed my time. I'm very passionate about sports, and I train regularly, I play other sports regularly. Now the interesting thing is, in all this, right, over these last few years of being so active in sports, all these so-called challenges all simply disappeared. It's very strange. They've simply disappeared, because I've become so busy with my life
Yeah. Yeah.
that without even realizing it,
Mm.
it has now become, something. Today I'm in a very happy frame of mind, doing well in my profession, and at the same time doing well in my sort of sports career. And it's
Mm.
very strange, how sports ultimately ended up becoming something
Mm.
that gave me sort of like a new lease of life, and made me again a very happy person. So I went through that challenge for several years, very difficult phase. But today I would say that I'm in a very happy frame of mind,
That's awesome
physically
to hear.
healthy, and very happy, competing. And I have a lot of aspirations, in terms of what I would like to do in terms of my swimming career, if I can call it.
Yeah.
So that's maybe something I thought I'll share.
I think it's wonderful, and I think for our viewers who are looking at it, I think all of us go through different challenges. So I think one of the first thing is to uh, acknowledge that you are going through a challenge, and then find a solution which will try to get you away from this. And I think, as Vijay rightly pointed out, nothing better than sports. Uh, so many uh, times is sometimes all of us say that you need to be active, do some exercise, but it becomes more of a core. Matlab it becomes more of a task, and I'm sometimes not willing to do it. Go for my morning walk or go for my jog. But in case I think we take it a little bit in a competitive manner, and specifically playing sports, like he mentioned, whether it's football, badminton, or any other thing which you like, uh, and not playing on the mobile phone. I don't think that will help. Saying, oh, I played on the mobile phone and that is what got me out. I think thanks a lot,
Yeah,
Vijay, for sharing that.
I just want to sort
Yeah,
of, yeah,
yeah, please go ahead.
if I may just take 1 minute, just
Yeah,
sort of,
definitely.
if I may just say something or emphasize something.
Yeah,
I'm being very open here because we go a long way.
yeah.
There was a phase during my early college days, where I also went through certain stresses due to X, Y, or Z reason.
Hmm.
And there was a year or two where I had actually taken medication for stress.
Oh.
So the interesting thing is, when this time I went through a similar phase,
Hmm.
rather than choosing quote unquote medication,
Mm-hmm.
I said, is that the only way to overcome stress, or can I find another way? And I
Hmm.
found that actually sports played as good, if not a better, role. I'm
Hmm.
not necessarily, disrespecting medicine, the medical field. After all, my own mother is a doctor, but I'm
Hmm.
just trying to tell you the miraculous power of sports.
Yeah.
I've never needed to, get medicated or anything.
Hmm.
And it actually sort of helped me to overcome depression and those type of stresses.
Hmm.
Purely that is the power of sports. We cannot really underestimate the power of sports, and if you have a strong objective behind you, if you're really
Hmm.
passionate about it,
Hmm.
it is almost like a miracle, I can say, that I've never really needed to take medication or anything like that, and it's just worked wonders for me.
Great. And so, Vijay, now coming to the last segment. So, what what are your plans for the future? Maybe next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Have you thought about
Uh,
it? What you plan to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. See, Tuhin, in my case, my son is finishing his 10th standard, and he has
Hmm.
obviously a minimum 6 to 7 years of,
Education.
education ahead of him.
Yeah.
And since I'm quite well established in my teaching profession and in my training profession, and I enjoy it, so
Hmm.
I intend to continue teaching and training, and pursue my sort of career as a teacher and trainer.
Hmm.
And simultaneously I have several aspirations as far as my competitive swimming is concerned. So
Hmm.
I have a very crazy aspiration.
Hmm.
Interestingly, we even have international events in
Wow.
masters swimming.
Okay.
So we actually have the world championships which are held every 2 years. So my goal is to qualify and represent India at the world championships,
Hmm.
which happens once every 2 years.
Hmm.
And that's my sports oriented goal.
Hmm.
And as far as teaching and training is concerned, I just want to go with the flow,
Hmm.
continue to do it because, I'm very happy in that space. So that's where I see myself for the foreseeable future. Life is what happens to you when we are
Yes.
making other plans. So, we really don't know what will happen,
Yeah.
but this is
Yeah.
what I have planned for the next
Plans
few
for it.
years.
Yes. So I
Yeah, yeah.
definitely hope, and I'm very sure that all your aspiration will be taken care of, given your focus and your determination which you have. And so, the first thing again, when you are going to be winning, maybe the state, uh, and maybe then going ahead and winning the national veteran backstroke championship, we'll have to do this again. We'll have to come back again and talk about Zindagi Ka Safar
Oh,
part 2 with
absolutely,
Vijay. Yeah.
absolutely,
So we'll
absolutely. It'll be my
catch up
pleasure.
there. So I think it's wonderful. Thanks a lot for being very candid and frank and sharing so many insights about how to live life. Uh, so I really enjoyed it, and I am very, very definite all our viewers are really going to love what we have. Thanks a lot, Vijay.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Absolutely my pleasure, Tuhin.
Okay.
Thank you.
All the best, Vijay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.